Hi, this is Sir Flobojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm King Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this is WAK. We got a couple of serious ones under our belt.
Slept with the king.
And you become the champion day one and walk out.
I'm surprised your beards didn't get Velcroed together.
Explain that. You have to explain.
I haven't a clue.
That's why.
Some sort of LARP thing. I survived that. I'm not...
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAK, where we discuss topics important to the Kingdom of Winter's Edge, interview the Amp Guard community, mess up on the roll-in, but it doesn't matter because Cabbage isn't going to cut this, interview the Amp Guard community at large, and talk with interesting people from around the foam fighting world. This week we've got Clover on. Clover, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We've been wanting to do this for a minute, so it's good to have you on. I know around Winter's Edge you're a fairly well-known figure. You're a defender. You've been champion a few times. You were prime minister once. But why don't you, in your own words, tell everyone who you are and why we should care?
Well, I mean, I've never wanted to toot my own horn anyway, so why you should care, I don't know. A lot of people ask for me to be on here, so here I am. I just like creating games and doing stuff. It's like, I don't know, I just like Amp Guard. So, and people like to hear what I say, apparently. So
I want to talk to you about a couple of the games that you've created because we've had some other guests talk about them before. But before that, you have a somewhat unique perspective from some of the other guests that we've had on. You, if I've understood correctly, did not originally start playing Amp Guard in the Kingdom of Winter's Edge, or even the Principality of Winter's Edge at the time. You guys were a part of another kingdom, is that correct?
Right. I actually started Amp Guard in 2005 in a place called the Bastion of Howling Winds out of Monterey, California. At the time I was in the DLI, the Defensive Language Institute. I was in the Army and all that stuff. It was my first taste of actual combat LARP, as it were.
Okay.
I grew up in Alabama, and it's so weird because it's I kind of stumbled into it. It's something we'd always done because me and my dorky D&D friends from high school started making weapons out of the black. Oh, they were totally unsafe, but it was just PVC, the regular black insulation, and duct tape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think we broke most of those upon each other.
Yeah, that's tradition.
Yeah, as you do. But so when I left Alabama and joined the Army, and I walked out there and saw somebody using what was basically DAG weapons at the time, and they said, "Oh no, we're doing Amp Guard," and that's my first taste of it. And then I fell out of that for a while. Got sent to my normal station and never saw it again. After leaving the Army, I went to the oil field out in Texas, and I walked into a comic shop at one point. I think I was playing Magic the Gathering at the time. And I just saw some dude he was in full garb, and he had this long braided pink belt.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I was like, "Hey, what's this?" Because it looked familiar, and he said the words Amp Guard, and I was like, "Oh, I know that thing. How do I do the thing?" And he introduced himself as Taco the Pink of Golden Plains, and that
Beautiful
is where
name.
I know, right? He's actually part of my fighting company from there. I ended up joining that fighting company. He's a real chill dude.
Nice.
But I did most of my time in Amp Guard. I had the taste from California, but a lot of my time was out of the Golden Plains. And a lot of my initial politics, learning how politics work and all that, unfortunately. And you gotta understand, it is a different game. Yes, the development of games, I would say even the stuff that I do is even weird for Golden Plains level.
Right.
It's not like I brought their culture over here, as it were. It's just it was considered outlandish over there too, and it was the meta's way different for sure.
Texas Amp Guard culture always gets called different, no matter where you're at. It's certainly In Winter's Edge, we say, oh, well, in Texas, they do this. And even, talking with folks from Neverwinter and from Rising Winds, they all say the same thing. Oh, well, in Texas, they do that different. You wouldn't do that in Texas. Now, if you were to go and fight some of the guys in Texas, like there's always that, I don't know if it's a pedestal that they're put on, but it's something.
I don't think it's a pedestal. I think that it is an extension of the fact that our oldest kingdoms are from that area. And so you talk about the culture that Winter's Edge has, or the culture of the Kingdom of Neverwinter, which we have been tangentially involved with in some way for quite some time. Give them another 10 years.
It's the
or in some
Amtgard
cases,
equivalent of old money.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. These kings have been around for what, 25, 30 years at this point?
Well, I think that's part of the if I can say, the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about cultures, coming over here is, I respect for sure that they're, some of the oldest kingdoms and stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of the problems that you have, for instance, in our culture, are the people that you say, quote, are like the old Amtgard.
The appeal to tradition types. Right.
And so that's real thick in Texas. And you can end up in some, like, I think the number one thing that kills any Amtgard period is politics. Politics are the worst thing.
Yep.
I as much as I am involved in them, I despise them.
It gets used as a curse, but politics can produce positive results if the people driving it are positive. The problem that you run into is when you, Clover, and you, Cabbage, are both going for the same thing and both legitimately think that your way is the best way to accomplish it. And neither way is bad. Neither way is wrong.
Yeah.
But then now there is this dissension of what is going to be the best way to accomplish that. And this part of it, I think, is what you're specifically referring to. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Clover, but the problem is how that gets resolved. I almost never see it done well, and it is because the people that are resolving it we're not trained orators. They're
not thinking about the precedent they set.
Yeah, right.
If you do a thing as a monarch, the next monarch that comes after you can also do that thing.
Or they can choose to totally ignore it. Go ahead, man.
I think when we talk about any sort of leadership, I think if we talk about the best, abilities or traits of leadership, I think number one is being able to listen to the people around you. And it was one of the things I had to grow into because, I don't think anybody starts off this way coming into leadership. Is you got to learn when to accept that you're wrong. And you have to be able to understand that you can be wrong, regardless of where you are. Like, don't get me wrong. Let's say me and Cabbage were to get into a disagreement about how we're going to do something.
Sure.
At the end of the day, Cabbage makes the call, and I need to understand. The Regent PM. When I was in the PM slot, there's been one or twice where me and Cabbage ran into that exact same scenario where he wanted to do one thing, I wanted to do another. Neither one was considered particularly bad, but I needed to accept the fact that my job is to back his play. He's the guy voted in as monarch.
It's so maybe the example that I use, I want to touch on what you just now said in just a moment, but maybe the example that I used was not a good example in this case. And I'm going to pick on Neverwinter again because I know they have something going on down there. I want to start by saying that I don't fully understand the political situation in Neverwinter right now. I have not talked to any of my friends down there to find out specifics on what's going on. I just know that something has been going on. They've had some talks with BOD members and how they're handling things, and with their monarchy and how they're handling things, or somebody's been butting heads in some way down there, right?
Yeah.
And I remember specifically that someone had mentioned something about their handling of the COVID situation when it first came out, where they were just telling parks, you can't meet.
Yeah.
And some parks were saying, but we want to meet. And for purpose of this conversation, I'm not questioning whether that was a good idea or a bad idea or something like that. But in that context specifically, this is what I was trying to make the comparison for Clover, where I was saying, maybe you have one side and Lucas has one side. COVID, I understand, is also not the best example, but I'm struggling to find a good example. So I hope that you can kind of follow what I'm going for here, where there's multiple ways to approach this situation, and the problem is that it's not just you being able to sit down and say, Cabbage, we need to work this out. Like, maybe both of us leave the negotiation table not happy, but we need to get it worked out. It's always the fact that in this example, you have some, I'm going to say cronies, and I'm not saying it offensively, right? But
Right. No,
you both have a camp. Maybe that's a better way to say it. You both have a camp that's behind you that's saying, no, man, you're wrong. This is right.
Well, let me try to synthesize something here, because Clover, you pointed out like your job was to back my play, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but I will say that I trusted you enough as my prime minister that if I made a call that was truly fucking bad, you were going to test me on it. And there were several times where I would do something and you would say, I don't know if that's the best way to do that, and then I would stop and go, well, let me think about this a little bit more. And so I genuinely, especially near the end of your term after we had worked together for a little bit, I genuinely believe that if I ever did something that was a bridge too far, you were going to tell me that I did it. And I think that's the dynamic that ultimately works, because, like, yes, we didn't agree on everything, but I also knew that you were going to stop me from doing the wrongest thing if you had to.
Well, I mean, yeah, I was going to kick and scream or whatever, but at the end of the day, like, for instance, I mean, if you don't mind me dragging out some of the business that we had to deal with.
Oh, I know it's going to be the all thing.
Oh, not at all.
Oh, shit,
I don't
okay.
mind the all. No, I thought the whole thing went okay. Like,
All things considered,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, my only request is that if we're bringing up things that actually happen, omit any names that were involved.
Oh, no, this is just straight up when we were talking about, like, as a matter of fact, using the COVID situation. Like, when we first, because, I mean, we had, one good month before COVID hit us?
I don't even know if you had that.
In the PM position. And so, I'm going to be real, my initial aspect my initial outlook at it was, I didn't think we needed to shut everything down, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't want to kill AmpGuard over it.
Yeah.
And yeah, looking back, I was completely in the wrong. Like, that was not the right call. I definitely think Cabbage made us make the right call, as it were. But I mean, we had our disagreement. We definitely, I kicked back and forth a little bit. And another one I kicked back on was when ABOD was, I don't know if we should put that one in there.
I mean, it's up to you. Okay. The heat comes back to me, and honestly, I don't care.
Okay. Well, like when ABOD was forcing us to make a statement, that rankled me real bad.
Yeah, well, it was just disappointing. It needed to be done at all. But yes, I get where you're coming from.
Well, and that's where I stood on it. Is like, we can make that call, make that statement if we want to, but the idea that, like, no, they're telling us to do it, that just twisted me the wrong way. But anyway, I made the wrong call on what I wanted to do with COVID when it initially hit. And fortunately, me and Cabbage, we hashed it out, and that's the way it should be. Even if I absolutely despise, which this wasn't the case per se, but at the end of the day, yes, I'll kick and scream, but Cabbage is the monarch, and I'm gonna definitely, if I think he's stepping way out of bounds, I'm gonna be pretty public. I'm just gonna be honest.
Yeah, I always believe that you would, which was a good thing.
So this was more, this wasn't less a situation of you saying, I'm just going to be a clone or whatever of his opinion, and more of you saying, I'm going to approach this in such a way that I won't go out and immediately and publicly embarrass him or something like that. Like, we can still have continued conversation, and I'm not going to hide the way I feel about the topic. You were just, because I had used you and him as an example, you were saying the monarch is the one that makes the call. The conversation can happen up to that point. Is that kind of where you were?
Yeah, I mean, what happens is, eventually at some point, Cabbage puts down and says, hey, okay, I've heard everything. I've thought about it. Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah, there was never a point where I thought you had like an ulterior motive or anything. I always kind of just went at it with the assumption that you were being, completely honest with what you believed.
Yeah.
That is, so it's funny because I kind of want to hit on that a little bit.
Sure.
I think when we talk about the toxicity of politics, or what I believe to be the toxicity of politics, it's exactly that. And it's one of the things that I do, the whole Clover, just Clover. I don't use all the fancy titles, and I've got my own soapbox about awards in general, but we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We will now.
But I absolutely despise, and maybe it's because I just, I don't have the depth for it, but I hate politics I hate back alley politics. And so when it comes to me, I will tell anybody exactly what I think about a particular situation, and you know that what I'm saying, I'm not going around and telling somebody else something different, because I'm going to tell you. If I'm going to tell whoever I have a problem with why I have a problem with it. I'm not going to be, rude or anything like that, but I'm going to be honest. And I think that's what we have a lot of problems. I think that's where the toxicity of politics is. I think people get secretly thrown under the bus on things.
Ambushed is what I was going to say. Yeah, secretly thrown under the bus. Yes, I agree.
Or I call it getting torpedoed, where you you're doing all the right things and then somebody else shoots you down. And I hate it. I hate it so much. I definitely think that, and I think everybody should do it. Of course, they're not going to, and I'm not so naive to think so. But I think a lot of problems in amp guard politics could be saved if everybody just said what the heck they mean when they mean it.
Or if they just talk more. I mean, how many times have we seen something come up that if the two parties had just sat down and spoken instead of not listening to, and I'm using very vague, broad examples.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about, and this is what I was going to reference.
Not listening to what the crowd was saying or what other people. This wasn't like an ad populum sort of an attack or an ad hominem. It was, if they had just sat down and listened to the actual thing that was being said, I don't think that that the situation would have progressed to the level that it did. I think that there's a danger in listening to the crowd and not just sitting down and having a conversation, even if you're frustrated with someone.
Yep,
that's the best time to have it. And like you touched on, Clover, be respectful, be polite, and know yourself well enough that you can say, you know what, I'm too frustrated to have this conversation right now. I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to calm down. If it's a couple days, you can still message the person and say, hey, I want to talk, but I can't do it right now. I need to calm down or whatever, right?
Well, okay, let me bring this kind of full circle real quick. So started in Golden Plains, eventually ended up in Winter's Edge. Yeah, we're going back a minute, but we went on a tangent. So started in Golden Plains, came back to Winter's Edge. What's the biggest difference? Like, I mean, we can talk politically, but also just you moved from one amped guard culture, which we talked about being the old money of amped guard culture, to Winter's Edge, and we've always been kind of scrappy. So, what is that like?
Well, I'll definitely say, man, there's so many different ways that I could approach that question. So on the game side, the meta is completely different because in Texas, and it's in West Texas where I started, it's it's always swelteringly hot. So armor is like not a thing out there.
Right.
I would go out there, playing Bard in 1 point of armor, and I was just considered reckless and wild. So like the meta is completely different. Like here, monks are a garbage class. I'm not trying to be mean to the monks out there, but it's a pretty bad class in this meta because other people get to wear armor, but out there, your two options with that kind of heat are basically spellcaster or the thing that doesn't get pwned by spellcasters. So
that makes sense, yeah.
So monks are a lot more popular out there. Barbarian sans armor, and then that meta is completely different. And so you got to think about that too. Going back a little bit more for full circle to when I was talking about my primary interest in the game is like game creation.
Right.
Games that you make that I would make if I were making a kingdom level game for Golden Plains, it would have to think a lot more about spellcasters and monks. Because outside of that, I definitely don't expect to see any warriors.
Right.
Or I don't expect to see this, that, or if they do, they're going to be so off-brand that if they manage to pull something off that makes them relevant in a game, then more power to them. They earned it.
Right.
Politics-wise, I actually, and maybe I'm too new to Winter's Edge to know the difference.
Winter's Edge is relatively new in and of itself, so
yeah,
fair enough. Well, and that's the thing too. Like, I actually like when I first moved out of Golden Plains, I spent 3 months in Neverwinter and went to one of their Kingdom events and started trying to acclimate myself there because I thought we moved with the wife and that I was going to be in Orlando, but the cost of living in Orlando was freaking ridiculous.
Yeah,
So
that's
beside the point.
Disney Town and everything else, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where she's from and her parents are there, etc. But
Gotcha.
I got to get a taste of Neverwinter politics, and I love the people from Neverwinter, but no, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, if Winter's Edge is similar, then at least they're good enough at hiding it that I haven't had that big of a problem.
I think it's that we're so young we don't have a political identity right now. We're still struggling to find it.
We also formed, and we formed splitting off of Neverwinter, and a big part of that split was some of the problems we had with how Neverwinter was treating us. So I think we learned from that to some degree, specifically with how awards were given and just how events were held and things like that, where we felt like an afterthought. And so we learned that lesson, and when we became our own kingdom, we tried to apply that to everything we did going forward. And we'll see if that holds up over time, right? This is
right.
It remains to be seen.
I'm not gonna say that there aren't things that I hear about or whatever that don't concern me. I mean, every place has its problems, but so far I've been a lot more. I honestly feel like I am a lot more comfortable in Winter's Edge than I ever was in Golden Plains. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved my time in Golden Plains, and I love the people there, and I love, my family from over there. But
you have a favorite kid.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no doubt. And it's Winter's Edge, and by a lot. Like, no, for real. The big thing I think that drew me in is when I first came back here. Number one thing I loved is I was back near my family again. So I got to take I have 2 younger brothers, and I got to take them to their first Amp event. And I talked about Amp all the time because I was active in GP and stuff. Whenever we call, it probably end up in the conversation somewhere because I'm that kind of nerd.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came here and I got to take them to their first event, it was actually the next to last Crystalline Chronicles.
Right.
And I mean, absolutely.
Was that the one that not Ever Living Wood? Sorry, was that the one at what's the big medieval? Eastwind Castle. Was that the one at Eastwind Castle?
I believe.
Negative. It was at the Murder Barn. And
Murder Barn.
Oh.
I mean, don't get me wrong though. Like if the woods, let me tell you, if we could still use that site, I would. I know that it wasn't very conducive to certain things, but man, them woods were great.
Yeah. Good place to hold tournaments at, like fighting, like if we were doing Weapon Master or something. There was a good field for it there.
Yeah, there's big flat space for it.
But I got to go to the next to last Crystalline Chronicles with my brothers, and that was their first event. And man, I was just blown away at the difference, because another thing in GP, they're a lot more stick heavy and a lot more. You can definitely tell that Amtard branched off or is inspired by a lot more aggressive styles of slinging foam. Because I mean, I that's another tangent. I'll get into that later. But there's a lot more of the flirty stuff, and like my brothers came to me and were like, "Oh my God, this is what you've been talking about. This is a freaking blast!" And I was like, "Yeah, I know. I knew the whole time. That's what I've been telling you." Yeah. But that was my first event here at Winter's Edge, and I definitely was happy with the change after that. And so much so that when I first got here, I live in Anniston, Alabama, and there's no park anywhere near me, and I ended up going to the story of how I got to ELW is kind of funny, because I didn't know ELW existed. So my first move was like, I need to build a park. And so I actually I sent a petition in to start a park in Irondale, which is a suburb of Birmingham. Right. And I actually hit y'all's Facebook, the Kingdom's Facebook page, going, "Hey, I'm going to send in this petition or whatever." And I think it was Teflon replied back going, "Hey, there's a park already in Birmingham, right?" And I was like, "No, sir, I didn't." And so I hit them up. I found them on Facebook, and I tried to join their Facebook group, and Oz, God love him. Like the second I tried to like join their like Facebook group, he like hits me up on on the messenger and starts just giving me the ninth degree. Because at the time, they're a freehold shire, right?
Mhm.
And I guess he looked me up and he's like, "Oh man, this guy's got like." I think at the time I had like 4 warriors or whatever, and they're just like, "Oh, I don't want you coming in and just pooping on my field or whatever." And
He mama
Yeah.
beared you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. And so what did I do? I showed up at their park and completely rolled it. Um, but it wasn't even in stick. Like I was taking it easy, but they did a class game, and my first like in a class game interaction with Oz was he was running monk or whatever, and I was doing 1 point bard, and I come running up on him, and he throws his throwing dagger, hits me clean in the chest, and then I stab him in the chest and go point, and he goes, "Point? What do you mean point?" I'm like, I'm wearing armor. That's this big padded thing on my chest. And then he commenced to argue with me that bards can't wear armor.
Ah, okay.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, I hate to tell you, bro. Like, I don't know what to say.
I don't know how to break this to you. I got some bad
Right.
news. Your worldview is about to be real
But
messed
it was
up.
all good. It was all good. Like me and Oz, like from that point, it was definitely a little bit of a. I think he was afraid I was going to come in and just try to like, take over or whatever. And
Right.
it wasn't a. Well, we got over that, I guess, because
Hashtag
Well,
Bards Mimic.
Yeah.
right. Oh my God! Like, so okay. I know that I'm probably going to eat up like 3 hours of y'all's time, and I'm sorry because I
You're
keep
good, man.
going off on these tangents. But the whole reason that I played Bard in the first place. So when I first read the rulebook, I think, man, what was the edition in 2005?
7.0.
Okay, so that was
7
that's where
point
I-
something. Let's not get specific.
So I showed up and I read through the rulebook, and the guy who's running the Bastion of the Rising Winds, he was a Marine named Kai. That's all I remember. But he hands me the rulebook. He's like, "You can pick any one of these classes, right?" And I flip through the thing and I see Paladin, and I'm like, "Dude, that's my jam. I want to be a Paladin." And at which point he turned around with "Hey, I got some bad news for you, partner." And I was like, "All right, well, poop." Then I started reading, so I was like, "Okay, I'll take it home and I'll read through it." And I was one of those nerds at the time that I read that thing cover to cover, and I read over Bard, and Bard at the time had Mimic, and it said Mimic. You could mimic the first level abilities of any other class, and the plan was hatched. It was like all I have to do is get to level 6 Bard in 7.0, and then I can mimic Paladin, and I can just go out there as a level 1 Paladin and my 6 points and all that crazy crap.
Hey,
I
brother,
think
got
I
bad
was
news for you.
Yeah, another. Well, no. Here's the thing. At the time that I started it, they hadn't added they hadn't amended it, right? But
Yeah,
it was
that
I
was
hit.
the Interkingdom Rules Committee that made that amendment later.
Mhm. So I hit level. This is what made me mad. I think it was like halfway through level 5 when that amendment came through, and yeah, I was like level 5. I'm telling you, I was already like fishing around eBay trying to find my suit of plate that I was going to buy and all that stuff, and then they put the amendment in, and I was like, well, I mean, I'm already in for a penny, so I guess I'm in for a pound.
We're dating ourselves that eBay was the shopping service at that point.
Barely. It was still barely the shopping service in 2005.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, eBay was the only place you could look to find something like that. That's
Yeah.
the thing about it.
Museum
Like,
replicas, man. I got the
That was
magazine.
around in 05?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, the magazine. Yeah, you're right.
It's all we
I still
had in
remember-
2005 was the fucking magazine.
For our
I
younger
still
viewers,
remember-
magazines are pieces of paper that
Oh,
used to come in the mail.
Stop this.
I used to no joke when I got out of the Defensive Language Institute and I was trying to find some sort of LARP or something. I remember getting Dragon magazine, Dragon and Dungeon magazine for D&D, which was published by Piazzo.
Yeah.
But I still remember the ads for like mail in LARP.
Yeah.
Like where you have to mail in what you're doing each turn and stuff. And you imagine like a game that takes like 3 months to play only because like you have to.
Can you imagine being the one dude in the basement, like getting it, being like, this guy says he runs up the wall. Ah, fuck, I gotta think of a scenario for this guy. Hold on.
And I need to send it out to everybody else too.
Yeah.
Right? You're like tapping your pen on your teeth, trying to think about what your next move is going to be. Like,
That era brought a whole lot of really cool single-player role-playing games, though, that spawned some whole worlds. Eberron, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah.
It was fan-made, and I'm pretty
yeah,
sure that it was.
For Piazzo,
Yeah.
or Paizo, whatever, however it's pronounced.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you either, to be really honest with you. Well,
So it was another thing that led to them, off on a side note, it led to them doing, it's where the Pathfinder split happened. It's because, the 3.5 break into 4th Ed, and then they quit Dungeon and Dragon Magazine, like, right before 4th Ed. And then,
Good call.
Paizo just said, all right, we'll make our own D&D with blackjack and hookers, and that's pretty much what happened with Pathfinder.
Yeah. So do something for me real quick, because you've talked about, what you like in Amped Guard and what, kind of drew you in. Last week, I don't know if you listened to the episode we had with Teflon. It was a long episode, so even
I've heard every episode.
Oh, beautiful. Well, so there was a question that I never got a solid answer to, and no offense, Teflon, but I'm going to ask it to every guest until I get an answer that I like.
I'm not going to comment on this one.
I told Teflon to sell Amped Guard to me. Right, so there are a lot of other LARPs out there, and you've kind of talked about knowing, there's DAG and Bell and SCA and whatever they all are. What is it about Amped Guard that brings you back? Because you could just as easily go play DAG or Bell. You like you said, you have 4 warriors, probably more now.
I've got exactly 1 more now, so watch out.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I mean, but the point stands, you could take those warriors to another game that is more stick-focused, and you could do fine. So is it the class aspect? What about Amped Guard? If you had to put Amped Guard in a vending machine, what would draw people to Amped Guard, in your opinion?
So, in my opinion, and the thing that makes me, because I've looked at DAC, and I've looked at, I've played in a whole bunch of other stuff. And the thing that draws me to Amped Guard over the other ones is, one, you get to do it more often. You can definitely have like DAG practices and stuff like that. But Amped Guard is that combat stick. It's got the speed and the more, I guess, I don't want to say aggressive, but it is the more combat focused, try to put foam on a body type game that has magic and classes. And I think you have to be a lot when you add that mix in there. It's kind of like playing old school Baldur's Gate, where with the no pauses on.
You have been waylaid by enemies.
Yeah,
and must have been joined. Yeah, exactly that. And so, and that's the thing though. If you didn't have your auto pauses and stuff on, you got to think quick. And so, yes, the magic helps people who don't necessarily have, they can't just cast stick until it works.
Yeah.
It lets people play on that. I guess what do they call it in Star Trek, where they're playing like 3D chess or whatever.
Shoot, I should know this. I've been rewatching
TNG. I'm feeling stupid for not being able to just say this off the top of my head. But it's the same thing, 3-dimensional chess. 2D versus 3-dimensional chess.
Tri-dimensional chess or something like that.
Something like that. But so when you have your DAG and your Bell, all the non-spellcasty stuff, then you have people cast stick, and whoever can cast stick better wins.
Right.
You do have archery and stuff like that as well. But basically, it's like playing militia all the time, which is fine. I mean, for some people, that's for them. But this adds the casting. It adds that extra level when you're trying to do a class game. And I think before he got banned, Sir Gordon, the guy who wrote the Book of War or whatever.
Right.
I sat in on one of his classes, and that was one of the things that I know that we do it a lot at DLW, and it is the big selling point to Amped Guard to me is class games. It's what we have that the other quick combat foam sports doesn't have.
Right.
Because like Miro has spellcasting and that extra layer, but they're softest touch, and so I've played some Dystopia Rising, and I've played
That's what Hero plays.
some of them. Yeah, I've played some Parlor LARP stuff. And so with things with like Dystopia Rising,
Never
like
heard it
has-
called Parlor.
I've heard it. That's Vampire the Masquerade, right? Like that is a parlor
well,
LARP.
so, yeah, you have like
Okay.
vampire and werewolf and all those ones, but those ones have no like combat's done with like a deck of cards or dice or something like that.
Gotcha.
The LARP aspect is just the fact that you guys aren't sitting around a table and you're having to stand up the whole time, and you're in costume. But for like Dystopia Rising, like they use birdseed packet spells. Nero does the same, and then their softest touch. And man, when I say softest touch, it's like a shot can't come from more than a 90-degree angle.
Oh,
And
I don't like that.
Yeah, and when you throw a swing, if it at any point like could be considered too fast, they will let you know. Like you'll end up with a guy with a green bandana or like a marshal for their game or whatever come by and go like, "Hey dog, check your swings."
Well, see, I mean, I wouldn't even want to go out and play one of those games. And it's not because I don't think that the environment would be fun. It's because I think I would make it unfun for other people. I think I would be seen as like a massive bully.
Yeah.
Just because I'm...
Yeah. I'm totally with you because when I went into Dystopia Rising, like they have this whole like list of like weapon skills. Like you can't use a short unless your character has like the short weapon skill and all that, right? And so when I made my character, I'd been playing Amtgard in Texas for a while at that point. So I specifically made to where all he had was like throwing weapons, which I used these big squishy like Nerf grenades.
Yeah.
And like I refused to pick up a bat, or grab a shield or anything like that. But so in their games, and this is actually something I'm gonna maybe drop a little something here on like some champion plans and stuff like that. But one of the things that they do that's really cool is when you come into their event, you have to sign up for like 3 to 4 hours of an NPC shift. And
I can dig that, yeah.
Yeah, and so at some point during that weekend, for 4 hours, you're going to, the people who are running the event can, use you as a monster or an NPC and all that stuff, right? Well, at the time, there were some of the cross gamers from DAG and Amtgard that ended up on an NPC shift with me. And, they'd seen me before, and they were like, they wanted to do like a bandit raid where these guys were going to come in and their job was to just murder people. And they had what we would call shorts and shields. And that guy, I think a lot of people here might know him, something Harris. Now I can't remember his name. You always forget this stuff when you gotta recall it.
Oh yeah, you get in the hot seat and then it all goes away.
Right. A large African American fella with he plays in the Armored Combat League now. Anyway, aside from that, he spotted me and he's like, "This guy can swing stick. I want him as one of my raiders." Right.
Right.
So they gave us these like super soft like squish bat like shorts, and we run out there and to remove limbs in that game, there's something called mangle. So a guy mangles my leg while I'm sword and boarded, and I go down on one knee, fling the leg back, go into like classic Amtgard turtle stance.
Right.
And when he sees me like take that stance, he had that whole like eyes open, like, oh crap, this guy knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point forward, the guy that would run the games, the director, anytime he needed a murder dude, he'd be like, Clover, he started picking out all the cross gamers.
Right.
And man, there were some good stories with that, but again, I ended up pulling away from it because things that ruin most games, politics and softest touch is just
yeah.
for me.
You kind of calibrate to the game that you're playing, right? So like I have gone and played Belagarth before, and going from Amtgard to Belagarth where my hits aren't hard enough. People are saying light, and I'm like, what the fuck do you mean light? I hit you.
Right.
It made a pop. It made the sound. And they're like, no, you got to hit me harder. And I'm like, oh. And then I come back to Amtgard, and they're like, whoa, chill out, dude. I'm like,
Yeah, I thought we were friends.
yeah, like I didn't want you to call like, yeah, okay, sorry. I can see that being a thing. So I guess the mix of the physical combat is just enough, and then there's just enough of the mental game, class game, role play, all kind of together. So it kind of mixes all of those genres together in a way that's I guess,
It's fast paced.
Yeah.
It's fast paced. Because I think Dag is fast paced too, but it doesn't have the extra level.
Right.
So I don't know. That's my big selling point for it, is that you get both of those worlds.
Yeah, the pace of different combat sports in general is kind of weird. Sir Gillen, Zeb, he plays here at Radiant Valley. There's also an SCA group that meets.
Thor's Mountain.
Thor's Mountain and Barony of Thor's Mountain. Is that
Barony of Thor's Mountain?
And but there's an SCA group that meets just before we start Amthgard. So of course, Gillen comes out in his full kit and then sheds that kit and comes to play Amthgard. But it's funny because he'll go out there and he's one of the few people in SCA that fights Florentine with 2 stick. Everybody else thinks it's a suicide mission, which they're probably right. But Zeb is very, very, very fast. And so he'll go up against these guys, fighting sword and board, and he'll do things, and they're not expecting him to move as quickly as he is. And that's that he pulls a lot of that speed from Amthgard, and I think just physical conditioning.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Zeb has given me the wrath on my right tushy more than once.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what throws me about, and I don't remember whether it's Dag or Bell. I'm sure that one of our Dag Bell viewers are going to correct me on this, but one of them does not have what they call magic switch.
That's Dag.
Dag does not have magic switch. So
they have to, if you lose an arm, you have to put the weapon on the ground before you pick it up with the other one.
Yeah.
And I've had 20 years of training at this point of just flipping it over to my other hand. I still can't do it well after 20 years, but I mean, trying to retrain myself to drop the sword, that it goes against every single tenet I was ever taught. And I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
That's another game where I would just be viewed as oh, you can't play with us anymore, man. I'm sorry. You're just not doing what you need to do.
Well, I'll be really honest with you if we can be candid for a minute. I played Belagarth, which has certain rules that allow contact, like grappling and shield pushing and kicking.
Yeah, you can kick shields or whatever.
And it's not enough to tell a big Amthgard guy like myself. I'm 6'1", almost 300 pounds. It's not enough to tell an Amthgard guy, yeah, you can kick people with shields. You really gotta warm them up to those rules, because I didn't know that. They were like, no, you can only kick guys with shields, and I'm like, oh, I thought because I had a shield, I could kick that guy.
Were you just going through kicking people?
Yeah, I was trying to.
So I saw that was I think I remember the event you were talking about. My big thing there too was a lot of their kicks and stuff come when someone is legged or on the ground already. So there was, now I don't know if that's normal for that game or if it was just, this was very, very early on when we started doing crossover stuff with Dag Bell.
Yeah.
And my thought was that this was just meant to hurt people.
It's used like a disengage or to try to put somebody in a bad position more than anything. I was using it like this is Sparta, and let's see if I can actually kill this dude. And that's not how it's supposed to work. So you don't really, you don't adjust to it the way you think you would.
Yeah, yeah.
They also have, they have rules on grappling too. I don't remember.
I think the smaller
so
person.
Many things that happened with Dag that I don't know. It made me scared. They invited me to a Dag event, I think last November.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll go. But then I read through the rulebook. I'm like, all right, I will go. However, if I'm going, I am wearing, I'm using a bow, and I'm wearing a helmet with a full face guard. I don't care if it breaks your immersion. Because some of the stuff I read was exactly that, the shield checks and the kicks.
Every person that I've met from Dag and Bell are nice people.
Yeah.
They're cool to hang out with. They're great around a campfire. But I look at their game that they're playing and just think to myself, I got to go to work on Monday.
God, it looks fun as hell. I don't care. I don't. Listen.
Here's the big thing that pulled me back. So when I was reading through the rule book and I read the rules for rocks, I said, wait a second. So this is a thrown weapon that literally the only way for it to score a hit is for you to hit me in the face with it. Meaning that as you're out there going to use this weapon, your goal is to directly hit me in the face. And at that point, I was like, I don't know, dog. I think I'm going to have to pass.
Yeah, that is for me the selling point of Amthgard is that I'll be able to play it when I'm 40, and mostly at the same capacity. I think that is a maybe a core tenet. Our focus on safety is, while frustrating sometimes, is I think one of the best parts of our game. So I can get behind that. Like
the other thing is, like, I'll say between kingdoms, you'd be surprised how much acclimation and difference between kingdoms. Because I stated earlier, like GP, you could tell that the game came from some more aggressive games
Right.
out in Golden Plains. For instance, the way I used to run Bard out there was I would run 1 point of armor and I would go double daggers, because there's that little bit, and I actually got into a lot of trouble here when I first got here with Pyam over this, and we argued over this rule forever. But at the time, he was GMR, so I'm not gonna,
right.
Once he told me that's the way it was, that's the way it was. But so there's this bit in the shields part of the rules that says if somebody's shield is passively like being held in your way, then body to shield is cool.
Yep.
And so the way I would handle shields running double dagger is I would flip the one in my offhand to like an ice pick grip.
Yep, and then pull.
And I would just come here, buddy, and try to give him a hug. And man, I pulled that. I think I did that. Yeah, I did that at Crystalline Chronicles to somebody, and Pyam come like flying across the field at me, and told me it was a no bueno. And at that point, like, that's one of those, like, I'd been doing it in GP for so long that was almost world shattering to me.
Right.
Because I was like, I've trained to do nothing but double daggers, and now my whole life is a lie. Like,
yeah, I think you're allowed to do that now in Amped Guard. Like, there is some provision for manipulation of shields.
well, I mean, and it was there. Like, the rulebook part of it hasn't changed. It's just I still think he was wrong, but I mean, I'm not gonna, whatever.
Well, we're not
GMR
here
said.
to determine guilt or whatever. If he said it wasn't allowed,
Well, I'm
yeah.
not saying about guilt. I'm saying if he says it wasn't allowed, or if that was his interpretation of it, and he's the guy in charge, then there you go.
Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like trying to argue with a DM. You just don't do that. Like,
we have become, I think, more friendly towards weapon and shield manipulation over the years as well. As more integration came with Dagbell and our Sword Knight Bootcamp started being more of like a cross-game Sword Knight Bootcamp thing where they have teachers coming in from other games. I grew up in the same game that you did, Clover, where if you were two boardmen, you kind of had this invisible 1-inch barrier where it's like, no touchies, no touchies.
Yeah.
And then that kind of changed when we started going out west to Texas and to Colorado and stuff like that, where they were fine with shields pressing to one another, but I wasn't allowed to move the person behind the shield.
right.
I actually don't know now.
We used to have a maneuver called like the can opener.
Yeah, you take your board and rake it across the inside of their board to open them up. That was Arthon.
Yeah.
Arthon invented that.
Exactly, yeah. You can opener and then and give them a melee, and there you go.
Yeah, I don't have the rule book open in front of me, but I don't want to go on record as saying that's totally legal, because I'm not, that may just be a park rule we're
Weapon
all cool
manipulation?
with. Well, yeah, because...
Well, so weapon manipulation is a thing. It's in the rule book, and, due to that whole interaction, like, I've poured over this thing
Right, of
a
course.
lot. So I feel confident about it. Board manipulation is a thing.
Well, I'm glad you're confident about it, because I do it all the time, so I just didn't want to say, that's totally cool for everyone to do it, and then be like, oh, actually, I'm wrong. Whoops.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Like I stated way earlier, I do accept the ability to be wrong. Somebody could surprise me and adjust their glasses up their nose and give me the will actually.
Yeah.
As a Florentine guy, that's a big move for me too. Is you kind of pin the board towards their sword arm with your free weapon, and then because you have two and they have one, you hit them with the other.
Well, one of the
Hey man, you Flo have got me with a particular trick, and it's happened more than once. And like, I know what you're doing, and I still fall for it. I'm trying to train myself not to, but like, I still fall for it. You got this, like, I call it the stop motion stab, where like, so like there's this camo that bugs use in the wild called stop motion camouflage, which is they move like incredibly slowly while changing the size of their body mass while moving at something. Like they'll blow themselves up.
Yeah.
As they move closer to something, and they're moving really slowly, so it makes them look like they're the same distance away, and before they know it, they're on top of it.
Right.
And so you do this weird stab where it's like your I assume you're right-handed, so your offhand weapon like goes into like a passive shoulder block on the offhand side, and you start to stab, and I throw the board or whatever, if we're in flow or whatever, I throw my block when and where the stab should have been there, and then I guess I go past it, or I've already started resetting after what the block should have been, and then I get stabbed.
I can tell you what this is. Flo has a 9-foot wingspan and fights with 40-inch swords. So it's not that you're throwing. It's not that there's a weird timing thing. It's that his shot is coming from a different area code. That's really what it is. Like, I fight with shorts and I like to get up close, but when I fight Flo, I have to just dive at the guy and then hope I make it in. And then usually he takes one step back, and I'm like, oh, well, that was stupid.
Well, that's what I see this like straight like belly button aimed stab, and my brain goes, oh, shot, easy block, and then I throw said block, and I'm like, oh, well, that block, came a light year before the freaking stab actually came in. So.
Yeah, it's so. People are at different skill levels. So let's start here. This isn't picking on anyone else, but I fight you.
Quick pause.
Yeah.
That's Flo's way of saying, I'm just better than you.
No, I'm not talking about me and Clover. I'm talking about like there are people that this is just a fact of the game. There are people that are higher end fighters. There are people that are not higher end fighters.
Right.
The trick to fighting people that are higher end fighters is to throw the shots that we have all trained each other as higher end fighters that fight each other a lot to predict, and then not throw them in that way. You're still throwing the same shot, but you have chosen to do it another way. So let's take the classic like board shot over the shoulder. There's a billion different ways that you can throw it. There's probably 3 ways that it gets thrown to anyone when you're in a tournament or something like that and you're fighting a top-end fighter.
Right.
So what if you took that exact same 3 shots, whatever that is, and you chose to reinvent that? You made a new mousetrap with it, right?
Right.
Maybe that's just stalling it out a little bit, or adding some kind of new timing chain in where you paused, because you have still trained yourself up to this point to say, oh, he's throwing a number 3.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll move my board over here. Oh, what happened, right?
Yeah.
I see different fighters do this in different ways, but I love taking something that is an expectation and turning it on its head. And I think that there's a lot more opportunity in class games to do that than there is in just regular fighting, because of the way that you can combine spells and sword and everything else going on.
Right.
But I particularly really like that for Stick.
I don't really know if I guess I get what you're saying, like you can find the new combos and stuff like that in class games, but I think being able to, I guess, throw the trick, as it were, or throw the trick shot, or throw it in a way that they don't expect, I think it's more valuable in tournament, because nobody's got armor on and all that stuff. You just gotta get it there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tournament fighting is a skill. It is different in some subtle ways than other fighting, and you can have someone who is a really, really good fighter that does not perform well in tournaments.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So speaking of tournaments, you've got 5 Orders of the Warrior. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I love you, babe. Sorry about that.
No, it's totally fine, man.
All right, I'm good. Sorry.
So you've got 5 Orders of the Warrior, and this kind of sort of bleeds into a topic we've been dancing around for a minute, but you have some opinions on awards. You mostly don't.
Boy.
Yeah, you seem to not enjoy. I don't want to say not enjoy, but your opinion on awards seems to differ from a lot of folks. And I know that I have specifically given you awards because I knew that you would squirm when I gave it to you.
Oh, good job.
Yeah, I think I gave you your Knight Smith, and you were like, no, I don't deserve that. And I was like, aha, I'm the Monarch, bitch. Here's your Knight Smith.
Right.
So,
I do sincerely hope that you didn't give it to me just to make me squirm. I do hope that you thought that I deserved it.
You deserved it,
I
but it was a
disagree with you,
significant
but-
benefit.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So your opinion on awards, kind of explain that to us, because I know we've all, you say you're not in it for the paper, and I genuinely believe that. But what are awards to you? What's the point of them if not to motivate people?
I no, you're absolutely right. That is the point. That is why they exist. That is what they're they are there to try to do. But one of the things that I point to, we've been talking about cross gaming a lot, and I'm actually putting down my whole pad and pen because you done pulled out the soapbox. So
Yeah, I knew it was going to come out
I'm,
eventually.
I'm ramping up. I'm prepping. You look at games like Dagonville, they don't really have stuff like that. Like I think they have knighthood, but they don't have like ladders and all that stuff. And so I don't know the people that, and what I think we should be doing in AmpGuard. I think the problem with awards is that too often they lead to the toxic politics that we were talking about earlier, where somebody is doing something like to chase that paper to get their box tops, and then it turns into that's what creates the circles of people where you get the dark whispers. Oh, he didn't really deserve that. Excuse me. Or you have all the people that are coming in. It creates these cliques, and cliques are what turned into politics, and politics turned into they're just bad for the game.
Right. I think a lot of people feel like politics is what happens, with the monarchy and everything else, but politics can be a very broad term that applies to a lot of things.
Sure. Well, I mean, and I'm definitely pointing towards the darker side of them, where you end up, and you could either end up in the good old boys club or not. One of the examples I can use is I talked about some of the darker things, GP and all that stuff. I mean, I haven't done anything here that I wasn't doing in GP. And if you look at my awards all throughout GP, it's dry as a bone, because the second I came out there saying I don't like awards, here's why I don't like awards, they were like, all right, cool, bro, and didn't give me one. Which, again, it didn't bother me at the time, but out here they have a different view of it. And I definitely think the view out here is better, but I still think awards in general are just a bad idea. It leads to people doing things for the wrong reasons. I would rather have somebody like the people on the rose ladder. And I have my whole thing where I just do not accept roses, even though I do.
No, that's a Texas. Cabbage made a face. That's a Texas thing too. I think it's all of the Bobs, all of the chosen will burn their roses when they get them. Mm-hmm. They use them to start their campfire at night. I won't say everyone from Texas is like that, but
that paper's expensive.
Yeah, that costs a lot to print.
Well, a lot of the thing, and I had heard about this from when my knight took me on. We were talking about things like that, and I didn't have any roses at the time.
Who is your knight? Sorry.
Okay. My knight is Sir Warlord Reusion of the Golden Plains.
We'll get into that later. I'll put a pin in that.
Okay. And he told me about, I didn't know if it was the Bobs or whoever, but he basically told me about a crew that was like, they don't accept roses. And he was thinking about doing something similar with a fighting company that he was in. And I was like, man, it doesn't have to be a fighting company. Anybody can take on that mantle. And so my thing is like, when I get a rose, I say service is its own reward, and I'll rip it up right there. And so coming into Winter's Edge, I've made sure to let people know, hey, dog, I'll send a whisper to whoever the monarch is, wherever I'm at, like, don't try to give me a rose, please, because I don't think that the culture here would understand that or appreciate it. It really seems faux pas to turn down an award here.
I think.
But anyway,
I think that you could turn down an award, but I think that it would need to be done in I have been to ceremonies out in Texas and seen people publicly turn down awards, so I know what you're talking about, man. I have witnessed it. But you're right. Here is not there, and I think that if you were going to turn it down, that. If I was going to turn an award down, I think that the way that I would do it is I wouldn't make a scene in front of court. I would do something like I would announce either just privately to the monarch, or if I needed to do it publicly, then publicly once we got home and say, hey, I really, really appreciate this, but this is my stance on this. And just, I don't think there's a way you could do it in the moment and it come across well, because it's not something people are used to here.
Well, and so, but this, going back to my whole stance against awards, for whatever ladder you're chasing, I think that, you should be, I'm more interested in the person who's doing it to do it than the person who's doing it to get the next box top. And that's just the way I look at it. I definitely think that, but on the other hand, and I'm going to be real about it, I've been in positions where it's my job to hand out these awards, and I think there are ways to combat it and maybe do it the right way. But I haven't figured it out yet, and I've yet to see anybody else who has.
So let me tell you where my big hang up on this is, where the disagreement between you and I is going to happen. And if you've listened to some of the other podcasts, you may have heard me talk about this before, but I have known people that have a similar viewpoint to you before. I encourage anyone to have whatever viewpoint they want, but different things motivate different people. And I do not get to say what motivates another person. Where we agree, and I will steel man this part of it, is that awards can create this ambition in people. And we hear ambition used as a bad term, usually because the story that's being told is this bad thing that happened. But ambition can be good. Ambition is what drives people to get out of bed and everything else. It's what's driven some of our greatest inventions. It needs to be tempered, though. And the problem that I have is we cannot fall into this scenario where we are saying people shouldn't do it just for the award, because there's good people out there that are going to accomplish good things, that are eye on the brass ring type people, that are just doing it because they got in the game and they wanted knighthood, and they have the steps that they've made and the motions that they have done are to work themselves towards knighthood. Now, I think that it's fair to entertain a conversation where people that have that mentality are more likely to fall to what I think you and I, Clover, would both agree are the dark side, where now it's become an obsession for them, and more realistically, a point of depression, very likely, because there's this depression that could come if they don't get something right.
Right. Well, and that leads me. I actually have 2 points to counter to that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
The first one is exactly that. Like you start to build an expectation, and then I think the quality of whatever. I'm going to use roses as my example. Let's say that you're on the rose path and you're doing whatever, security crat or doing feast or whatever.
Right.
And you start to get to that point of it does 2 things I don't like. One is, let's say I've got 9 roses, and there's somebody else who doesn't have very many, or in Mr. Nine Rose, he's close to his knighthood and whatever. I think, now don't get me wrong, I don't think that. Let me just say what I'm going to say, and then I'll
circle back around.
Define it.
Sure.
Mr. Nine Rose gets more street cred and all that stuff, or they can sometimes be allowed to talk over other people because of this, these box tops that we've given them. The other thing is they start to feel, I guess, entitled, even though the quality may not be improving, or it may actually be declining, but now they feel stunted or slighted when they don't get their 9 or their 10 or whatever. And I think my evidence that I use to point towards that is, if you look at any sort of competitive game, like League of Legends or Overwatch or any of those games where they have rankings, right? If you ask anybody in the lower rankings or people that are stuck somewhere in those rankings and they can't progress, the last person they blame is themselves. When we here, as fairly intellectual beings, all know that it is probably a lacking on their part. It's not human nature to point at anywhere but everywhere else.
Yeah, we're all the hero of our own story.
Right. And so, but the thing is, and I think that's where you start to. That's why you find. You guys actually talked about it, I think, during your talk with Teflon, where somebody gets kind of high and they burn out, and you don't see them for 3 to 4 years or ever again. I think some of that is, they get to 6, 7, 8, excuse me, and then at the, using my phrase again, I guess, at the real talk of it, the monarch is going, hey, he's just either A, not improving, or, this isn't worthy of the next one. It's just not. And then rather than, accept or understand that, or try to up the game, the individual starts thinking that either A, somebody's sliding them, or B, somebody actually is sliding them. Because freaking politics. And all this goes back to the root point of awards. All these other games can find volunteers to do this stuff without this motivation. So I don't understand why it needs to exist.
So I agree with you that the other games get volunteers, and there's not some award ladder that they're trying to climb. But they still have politics. They still have clicks. They still have all of those other things that we discussed. That part doesn't disappear simply because the merit badges that we get disappear, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And there is also this idea of who gets to do these things at the different events that they run, and whether this person will do a good job or whether this new person should be allowed to come in. The problems that they're facing are the same, though the reasoning behind those problems may be slightly different from one to the other. So my challenge back to you is, are you describing an aspect of human nature that you and I can both agree is distasteful, and not something that is necessarily award focused?
I can definitely agree that, we are talking about an aspect of human nature, but in that same instance, if I can go back to my video game calculation of it.
Yeah,
sure. It's always teammates, by the way.
Okay, so you've got Overwatch, which has their elo system or their ranking system or whatever.
Right.
And on the other hand, you have, I think back in the old school days, there was a competitive online Halo, and that thing existed, but no, the player program, where it would program to kind of put you with players around your level, that existed, but it was completely invisible.
Yeah,
right.
The MMR, the hidden MMR back then.
Yeah, the hidden MMR, and so yes. Microsoft at the top end knew who their top players were, and that's who they were going to invite to come play, in their big Halo pro gaming, this, that, and the other. But for the masses playing the game, it was, in my opinion, a better environment, because think about the toxicity that exists when people are chasing for all, their silver, gold, or whatever in League of Legends or Overwatch is way, way worse than anything I ever experienced that had hidden MMR. Because with hidden MMR, everybody's just there to play games, and if they're getting mad, it's because somebody's camping or being cheesy. It's not because they've got anything on the line.
Yeah, but is an online... So I think Lucas wanted to jump in here with something, but online games have toxic environments. Our Facebook community has a toxic environment. Every online creates this shield of anonymity, and I'm not trying to discount what you said, because your comparison here is that this also happens in real life, and I understand what you were getting at with that, because the awards are analogous to the ladder that you're climbing for the thing. I get what you're saying. I'm saying that I don't know if you can do a direct comparison between that online environment and what is going on with AmpGuard. I fully admit that people have got frustrated when they thought that they did enough, that they should get an award and they didn't. That happens. I fully admit that people have gotten awards for things, and everyone in the audience was kind of left looking around going, oh, what's going on? And we clapped because we're happy for the person, but we're also confused by what's going on. This is, our system is set up to where two people at a time,
right,
our monarch and our regent, are giving out awards based on their personal preferences. and those are not a computer calculated MMR. Those are fallible human beings that can make mistakes, that can have favoritism, that can do that. So again, still manning the position that you're taking. I understand how people can be put in this situation where favoritism or where just simple oversight happens. I mean, last week we had Teflon. We were talking about Oz. We mentioned Oz earlier. We had this whole thing where he was given this order because it's not that there wasn't this feeling like he deserved an actual rose for what he was doing, but there was a misunderstanding of how long it had been and how many times he had been performing this, what I consider very vital task of being Metacrat and other things that he was doing. You know, and
I've got more on that in a minute, but yeah, I see where you're going. I think this is a really rock and a hard place situation because the true solution to what we're all describing here is a fixed
an objective standard.
Yeah, you design a piece of garb that has handmade binding and you get a fifth garb, or you have a fixed awards progression system that then is completely non-biased. It doesn't matter who you are, you made the garb, you get the box top. But then I feel like by doing that, you kind of rip the soul out of the game. And I guess that's, to me, that's what differentiates Amped Guard from...
Well, I can definitely... So here's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, my stance on awards as a whole is separate than my stance on... Because I accept that awards are part of the game,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
I've got my extremist view about their role in our game, but I accept that they are part of the game. So with that, with accepting that, I now look to, okay, awards are part of the game. How do we quantify and hand out those awards?
Yeah.
And I definitely think I'm in your camp there, where I don't want it to be as robotic as do X, gain Y, because when you do that, exactly that, you rip out the soul, and two, dude, everybody who plays this game is a gamer. They're going to figure out how to min-max it, and then everyone's, say, oh, you have to make, a tunic with X amount of embroidery or whatever, and then somebody's going to come up with the most absolutely proficient way to do it, and
we'll have doilies, just doilies turned in at every single ANS tournament.
Well, to a certain extent, for certain belts, you almost put a price tag on the thing. Specifically with Serpent, right? Like,
I don't know that that's not the case already.
Well, maybe, yeah. I guess to me, I care less about the awards, right? I'll give you an award for anything if you did the work and put in the effort and people think you deserve it. I think this is where masterhood is supposed to come in. You can get 10, maybe you make 10 doilies and you get 10 dragons because people weren't paying attention. But when it comes to your masterhood, that is where people are supposed to actually dig into your record and what you've done and make sure it is a thing of quality that you then get your masterhood for. And I feel like that is maybe the one, what's the word I'm looking for here? The stopgap that prevents that to some degree. It's not perfect, right? But
so this actually leads it a little bit into... I had a discussion about the COK, and that's a whole... I'll get it. Let me remind me that I put a pin in some talk about the COK.
Okay.
We still have one about tonight too.
Yeah, I've got a running list here. It's totally fine.
We have plenty of pins. We've been talking for 2 hours now, and we got
an hour and 12 minutes, but
But I'm sorry, I'm so long-winded, guys. I really am.
We knew this coming into it. It's totally fine.
Fair enough. All right. So, I definitely agree. So one of the things that, I was so fortunate to come into y'all's kingdom through Everliving Woods, because I was able to meet those guys and, give them my take on how I view Amtgard and what I like about Amtgard. And, I guess the fact that I was raised around the same area as them means that, I naturally fell into people that were more conducive to my line of thinking.
Right.
And before we ever joined Kingdom, we basically, I remember when we were petitioning for Kingdom, we were all of the mind that, look, we don't chase paper. We don't, that's not why we're trying to join the Kingdom. We're trying to join the Kingdom because we want to make Amtgard better. And everything that we do is the goal. Like, the goal isn't box tops. It's how do we make Amp Guard better? And when we look at that and compare it to awards, one of the things that I've said pretty much anytime I've ever been in a role of leadership, especially on the kingdom level, has been if the person does the thing, they get the thing. And there have been lots of times when I've been discussions, talking with the monarchy about does this person deserve this award?
Right.
And we sit down and we have an honest talk about it, and it's like, I'm going to go into an example here in a minute, but the end result is if they do the thing, they get the thing. And it works both ways. If a person breaks a COC and they eat a ban, they did the thing, they get the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes, tying that into your ideals about mastery, I definitely agree with it. I think a person, they do whatever they need to do to get their 1 through 10, and let's say he made 10 doilies and it went under the radar for some reason, right?
That's a really nice doily. That 10th,
better be.
That 10th is like there's some depth and layering to that doily.
It came with whatever bribe the judges needed for him to win Dragon Master on that doily.
It's only like $20.
Yeah.
But you got to pay for that dragon belt somehow, I reckon.
Yeah.
Or that serpent belt. Anyway, when we start considering that for masterhood, the monarchy needs to sit down and have an honest conversation. Go like, all right, guys, don't get me wrong, they are freaking nice doilies, but are we really going to give this guy masterhood on doilies? Can we see something else? Blah 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 blah. And I think at that point, this actually I can kind of pull the pin out of that COK thing. Because I agree with you that there's a difference. You guys were talking about earlier. There needs to be that break between masterhood and knight.
Yeah.
Master should be the hey, I am the epitome of this, where a knight is something completely different. Giving somebody a knighthood for whatever they do, it means something completely different. And my thoughts on it are once a person is given masterhood, and I know you're probably going to disagree with me, Flo, and I will preclude this with I am not a knight. I have no, I can't sit here and speak for any other knight or how they think, but this is reading the rule book. This is how I think this poor layman thinks that the circle of knights should work. Masterhood is something that is determined by the kingdom. And that is, the regent and the king and the monarch. They get together. They look out. They have an honest conversation, probably with the person, with other people in the monarchy, with other knights of that or other masters of that particular ladder and all that stuff. And they determine, hey, this guy is a master. He gets his masterhood, and that should be the end of masterhood. And then knight is something completely different. And that's when the circle of knights begins to look at somebody. And I personally don't think that the circle of knights should be looking at, okay, what has this guy done to earn his master? I don't think that should be their job. I think the circle of knights' job should be, is this person of knightly quality? Is this guy...
Well, I know that's one of the things they look at.
Sure, I completely agree. But I think, and the reason I bring this up is that I've been in too many conversations where they're looking at giving somebody an award.
Right.
And they go, oh, he just got his 8th or he just got his 9th. We can't give him the next one too quick.
I hate
because
that.
the circle of knights might not like it.
I don't care.
You know
I
what I
hate
mean?
that.
They
Yeah,
might think he's moving too fast.
I don't care for that either. This has been referred to as a time gating. Like, is there not only is it your skill that matters, or is it the amount of time that you've put in, or is it some combination of both? And I actually don't have a problem with someone rising quickly in awards, so long as they are doing whatever they need. The classic example that Shalazar gave me once is if a master baker joins Amtgard and begins turning
Master Baker. Okay.
baker.
A guy who bakes,
Cookies.
come on.
Yeah, someone that bakes.
I took my headset off of one ear to scratch, and
So
it came out wrong.
If a master chef who stuffs things in ovens, it's still
It
no.
took me a
That's not
minute
what I was
to
going
Tell
Go
the
for.
for.
damn story. No, I know where you're at. I'm just an idiot.
If they if they join the game and they start producing all of these crazy things, right? Then why should there be a time gate for what's going on? Why is that important to them being able to put out these beautiful masterpiece level works? And what does it matter if what they produced for their 5th isn't as good as what they produced for their 4th, so long as both of them were above the level of award that they're currently being given?
I agree with that.
Now, I get that different kingdoms have different rules, and some of them will say things like, well, you can't award more than one award more than once every 6 months or something, and that's baked into their Kapor in some way or something like that. I don't want to get onto the topic of whether that's a good idea or not.
It's not.
I don't have an idea. I'm sorry. I don't have a problem with someone rising through awards very quickly, so long as they have the talent to back up whatever they're getting it for. I had a question for you, Clover, just to clarify a point that you made earlier. So masterhood, you said, would be given by the kingdom. Is the implication, the unspoken implication there, that the knight circle would then be the ones who do the knighting, and it would not be the monarchy that did the knighting?
Well, so here's the thing. We all know that at the very end of the day, the monarch can hand out a belt whenever the heck he wants. Cabbage can turn around and hand you the other 3 belts right now if he wanted to.
He made me a Paragon Flow.
Oh, man.
Be cool.
But that's the real deal. Like, he can hand out belts on his whim, technically. But come on, we all know at the end of the day, like, you know what I mean? The real talk is the Circle of Knights are the people who put forth the recommendation, and pretty much there are some things that I think that, a king could, take a recommendation and, buck it or say yes or no. But we all know that person would probably be committing political suicide in one way or another.
Right. So we talked about this last week when we had Teflon on, and we kind of came to the same conclusion. Teflon pointed out, probably very rightly, that it would actually be worse for the person that I made a knight. If I were to just go to some newbie and say, hey, you're a knight now, that would be terrible for that person. They would never, ever live it down. But you said something where the monarch should give the masterhood, and I kind of like that because it is almost a procedural way to tell the knight circle, hey, this person is doing really good work, and I think they're ready. And then, I give somebody a masterhood. The knight circle then says, oh crap, this guy got a masterhood. Let's start looking into them. And so it is a way of sort of moving the wheels without me directly going to the knights and saying, you should make this person a knight.
Well, and we do that right now, not with masterhood, but it's like if you're above 8th order, we have a spreadsheet that Colleen, what's Colleen's game name? Shout out to Colleen. I'm sorry, I forgot your.
Dude, I don't remember her
I
name
forgot your game name.
I knew it until you said it.
Let me tell you, since we're doing the shout out to her, Colleen Gould, I think. Gould,
yes, Gould.
Goud.
Yep.
Anyway, her, man, like when I was PM, like she helped quite a bit when I first stepped into that office because
the tools she has are amazing.
Oh, yeah, man. She's great at what she does. I will say Libby, too, our current regent. Oh, man, she's great at it, too.
Yeah, Colleen, if you need something made in Excel, even if Excel just shouldn't be able to do that thing, she'll find a way to get it done.
Right.
She made something for the Knight Circle when Puddin was our GMCOK that auto-pulls from Orc, anyone that is 8th order and above. So we do this checking phase, and we... when we go to an event, we try to do this in-person meeting. This is something that's been relatively new within the past couple of years where, if you have above an 8th order, we'd really like you to stop by and say hi and let people get to know you. Everyone's welcome to come. You can hang out and we're just going to have, talk about whatever people bring up. But we specifically really want to get to know the people that are above 8. I ask about whether you wanted knights doing the knighting because there is a part of me that really, really likes that. We actually had a kingdom get in trouble. Clover, you may remember this. Wetlands back in 2006 or 7,
Oh, I remember the bi-mill
Yeah,
nights and stuff.
got in trouble because their night circle was the one that made knights, not the monarch.
Right.
So it was much more a system like I thought that Clover was referring to a moment ago, where like the kingdom could give masterhood, but then the night circle would just announce like, on this date, this person will be elevated to knight. And back then, there was no AIBOD. I think it was still Burning Lands that that was kind of controlling everything. And they had a very different opinion of how that should work. And I remember the drama on the message boards. That's how far back this was. Being that like their contract might get pulled because this was a big thing. And I don't know how it turned out. I think it turned out where their night circle is still the ones that do all of the knightings and stuff like that. There's a part of that is really appealing to me. My problem with it is that if you end up with a good old boys system, then you're trapped forever. I realize the stuff with the monarch. Like if the monarch gives it out, political suicide. You said that a moment ago. I agree with all of that, but there is at least a way out.
Sure, and I definitely think that the way that we have it right now is probably the way it should be. Because like I said earlier, man, if I were in that position, anything that I try to do in Amtgard, I always try to look at, is this better? Is this the best move, in my opinion, for the health of Amtgard? And so, for instance, in Golden Plains, the way that knighting works, yes, it's the monarch's signature that makes a person a knight, but they cannot knight somebody unless that person has been voted yes on the COK.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
But unfortunately, what that can and might have led to is you end up with I guess a Supreme Court type scenario where you can get certain people into that COK, and before you know it, you have a majority that can create one hell of a clique.
Right.
And I don't know that that's happened there. I'm just saying the potential for it is really heavy. And that's something that could happen if it's strictly the COK that hands it out. I definitely like the safety, because I would like to think that if I were in that monarch position and I saw that going on and I saw people deserving that just weren't there, man, I'd fall on that sword. I would in a heartbeat, to be honest.
Yeah, there's just this, it always gets thrown out. We always say it almost as a platitude, where it's like, well, the monarch can make a knight in Winter's Head, and
sure,
I can also take my lawn dart set from the 70s to the local park and teach kids to play with it, but I probably shouldn't. Yeah. It's probably a really, really, really bad idea, and someone's going to get hurt.
Dude, I miss some lawn darts though.
Yeah, man, and we're picking on this scenario, which is kind of like a sad scenario or a depressing scenario or something like that, instead of the opposite, where some happy things are happening and people are getting what they should and everyone's super excited about this person that is going to be a knight. That also happens. That situation also happens, but you always hope for the best, plan for the worst, right? Yeah. So this talk is really about like, what is the plan that we could come up with for a situation that would come up that I think all three of us would agree would be a not good situation for anyone that wasn't in that in crowd.
Well, right? I can name a good situation where I personally would have been okay with it.
Okay, go ahead.
So, we always talk about how I took a 5-year break from the game, and all of that, and it was almost a running joke. We had Donnie, Sir Darko, in our kingdom, and he constantly was churning out amazing leather work. I mean, he built a whole breastplate. There's pictures of me in it on Facebook somewhere, and I mean, it's
you're like 12.
Yeah. I have some facial hair. Anyway, he constantly churned out amazing leather work. I remember him being in the back of the van on the way to Florida, stitching leather in a bumpy van, no less, to put stuff together. And I mean, he never it got to a point where he was just not getting knighted, and he was losing for. Yeah, I'm going to say it. He was losing for really stupid reasons. And it was the time gate thing. Oh, you just got your 8th, so we can't. And so when I quit the game for a little bit, I said, I'm not coming back until Donnie gets knighted. Until he is Sir Darko. And it was a little bit of a gag. It was a little bit to take the piss out of the guy.
Right.
But if somebody had said, I'm the fucking monarch and I'm giving that guy a belt, I would have been all for it. I'd have been like, dude, this guy's deserved it for the longest time. Yes, finally, I will come to this knighting. So that's a situation where I can see it working, but I still wonder if Teflon is right from the last time, where that would have been kind of a black mark for Donnie, for Sir Darko.
Yeah,
it'd be a black mark for Sir Darko and for whoever decided to go ahead and pull the gun, just because, I don't know, at that point, Sir Darko's, and again, I wasn't there, so I'm just kind of rolling with what you were talking about.
Yeah.
But at that point, Sir Darko might be exactly what you need. He might be that thing in the COK that can shake things up and start getting people what they want. There was a reason that Never Winter, Never Nights was a freaking saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I heard it in GP. I was able to quote that from when I heard it, so it was a thing.
I didn't know it got that far.
Well, so Neverwinter, I'm going to say that this was unique, but I don't really. That's me saying that. I don't know if I have enough information on the other kingdoms to really say that. But growing up in Neverwinter was different for me, because the idea is that the next knight that you're producing is able to beat all of the other knights in that category. There was a step above. I remember when the Serpent Knights there was this expectation that they go and they win Olympiad to be considered for knighthood. And I wasn't in Monarchy there. I don't know if that was an actual, you must go do this, or if that was just the table talk that everyone had, right? But certainly as a populace member, that was what I believed had to happen for someone to get a Serpent Belt. That is ridiculous.
And you're absolutely right. That leads to a lot of too much. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead. We're both up on the soapbox. It's a big soapbox.
Yeah. That leads a lot of to a lot of what you see now, and a lot of what I guess a lot of people rankle against is that old guard mentality, and it's just gating. That's all it is. I get so sick and tired of it. Goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I believe, and a lot of the people that I'm with, you do the thing, you get the thing, and it's not up to them to determine where that bar is. It is up to the monarchy,
right?
And if you're looking at higher level awards, there's no problem with them reaching out to other people that are in that level to go, hey, what do you think of this? But at the end of the day, they need to be able to filter out that, well, back in my day, we used to, tournament uphill both ways in the snow. And you can't be that way. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who, once they have the thing, it seems an awful lot like to keep the spotlight on them, they're going to take it, they're going to, shut everybody else's spotlight off.
Yeah. And so we've said all of that. I am now going to give the justification that I heard from someone that was in Neverwinter, that was in a high-ranking position at the time. I don't even remember who it was now. They said that they did not move forward with knighting because, and some people in other kingdoms may not know this about us, Winter's Edge was the longest-lived principality in the history of the game. We were principality for well over 10 years.
Yep.
I don't even remember how long it was. And part of the reason, I'll even say the largest reason, that we did not move out of being a principality earlier was because we kind of lost our drive to do that. I mean, I know that sounds odd to say, and I'm not pointing to one particular day or event or conversation where we were like,
you definitely
fuck
got
this.
my eyebrow up.
It's not that we as a collective just said, fuck this, we'll stay under this kingdom or something like that. But we weren't making the motions to move forward with it because we were going down and we were having fun at the Neverwinter events. And I mean, I remember the crew, people would come to Knoxville and we would caravan out from Knoxville straight down 75, and there would be, my 15 passenger van and other cars, and we would go there and we would make up a third of the 150 people that were at the event or something like that. Those were all a blast, but we were doing that instead of focusing on our own principality. I don't remember which monarch it was that started it, but when I came back in the game under Puddin's leadership, he had either organized at that time or taken up from whoever had organized a bigger push to say, we have to do these things to be a kingdom. It's really reaching a now or never sort of point. Neverwinter did not do the knightings because they said we had already lost a lot of motivation towards that, and if we could also be king, and if we could also get knighted, then why don't we just make the area of Neverwinter bottom of Florida to top of Tennessee and call it quits, because we're not a principality at that point. We're not driving towards anything.
Yeah.
So I guess if I'm gonna like break this down into one sentence, the general thought is like, well, either come back into the kingdom or be your own kingdom if you want a knight.
I can see the logic.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I don't buy it.
Well, yeah, and again, every incoming night has to be better than the last night. It kind of sets, at a certain point, it sets an impossible bar, right?
Sure.
Like
it does, especially with that kingdom in particular, especially with some of the talent that they have down there. It can absolutely set an impossible bar, but it is where that saying came from, Clover. It's where the Neverwinter. If you look at the total knights that every kingdom has produced, then Neverwinter is lower on the list because of that cultural mentality.
you can pin some of it to quality control, and I can understand the argument from a purely, like, if I take myself out of the situation and I say, okay, a knight is supposed to be the best thing, then every knight should be better than the last. I can understand that. But this is a game that, we are trying to keep alive by keeping players interested and by showing them that there is something that can be achieved. And I think knighthood is one of the first things that anybody latches onto. Paragon is super cool in a lot of ways. I think it's cooler than knighthood. Hell, there are how many titles in our game above knight?
Right. None.
No, well, there are several.
No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing.
No, but there really are several. And who the hell cares? Knight is what people see. Knight's what gets all the cool stuff. That's what people want. So you are, I don't want to say you're doing a disservice to your players, but I feel like setting that expectation is probably taking a lot of wind out of a lot of sails that maybe just need more time to get there.
Well, it leads back to what we were talking about earlier, where you have your masterhood and you have your knighthood, and it should be a different thing. I think a knight should be different than a master in that, like, I don't think, I think you guys were actually talking about it with Teflon. It's too often that people look up and they see the end of the tunnel as being knighthood. They don't see it as, when the end of the tunnel should be masterhood. Knighthood should mean something else. Yes, it should only be available to a master, but it needs to be one of those things where you've taken what is a master and you've turned it into something else. Like where you have, for instance, you were saying like maybe the criteria is, being able to teach, being able to, share what you have and all that stuff. But I think that at the end of it, and a lot of what you should be doing is this person, and COK makes this, I think this is where the COK should come in and make that determination, because masterhood and all that stuff is determined by the kingdom. And then the COK goes, okay, yes, this guy is a master. We can acknowledge that. I think too often the COK starts picking apart how that guy got to master.
Yeah.
I don't think they should care about that. I think all they should be caring about is this person a knight? And what I mean by that is, can this guy teach? Is this guy good for the game? Is this guy, is he a person that we want to hand that, the highest honor in our game too?
I can agree with you there a little bit. I feel like, and I don't know that this is stated anywhere, but I do feel like knights are the representatives of our game. They wear the logo on their chest, and they're the only ones that are allowed to.
I can
so
agree with that.
Does this person represent our game in a light that we want people to see it? I think that's absolutely a question worth asking. But I think also, I'm going to pivot just a little bit. Sword Knight is one of those that is unique in that it has you can be a sword knight. and you can also be a warlord sword knight. And those two aren't necessarily the same thing. And so,
After award standardization, they are, though.
but there is still some difference, and it is still possible. And this is I'm going to steal a Zeb story because you did last time.
Sure, go ahead.
And he's admitted he doesn't listen to our podcast, so suck it. Suck it.
One of these years, he's going to go back and...
He'll finally run out of Joe Rogans to listen to. So his story was talking about rogues, specifically the rogues, and they would say, okay, where does everybody want to eat? And nobody would know, okay, well, only the knights. And then nobody would still have a consensus, and they'd say, okay, only the sword knights. And then still no consensus, and they'd say, okay, only the warlords.
Yeah.
And then, they'd figure out where the hell they were going to go eat. So, I mean, there is something to be said for, at least for Sword Belt having this extra thing that you can achieve that maybe puts you apart from other knights. If you really want to be the best damn knight, then Warlord is the next thing you go after. Or maybe it's the first thing you go after, who cares? But that is sort of the next echelon that differentiates. And no other belt really has that. And I don't know how you would even do it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is... You and I have had conversations about this.
Mm-hmm.
I crave standardization, not at the cost of individuality, but our belts. When award standardization came about, and a lot of the players that are playing now weren't in the game when that happened, the goal was to make it to where every single knighthood had standardized way to get it across every single kingdom, because that was not the case at the time. That part was accomplished.
Yeah.
And also to make it to where there were there was all of the belts were equal. I know that sounds like an odd thing to say now, but belts were definitely not viewed as equal then. I could make an argument easily that they're not viewed as equal now.
Yeah.
But you had a situation where sword was the only one with a masterhood, essentially.
Yeah. And that was your...
And that was your warlord.
Yeah.
Serpent didn't have a masterhood, still doesn't have a masterhood.
Well, and you would have to call it something like Grand Dragon, and we just cannot do that.
Yeah, please no. That's poison. The Crown didn't have a masterhood, still doesn't have a masterhood. Flame didn't have a masterhood, still doesn't have a masterhood. And so this is where I think that the award standardization failed. What they did is they said, we'll make Sword Belt like all of the others, so that when you get your 10th, you are also getting your Warlord. Instead of saying, I think that Sword Belt has it correct, and that there should be, like back then there was a 10th and a masterhood step for it, right? And the Warlord was a completely separate title. It had completely separate criteria. There was... I'm going to go to Sir Shadow. I think Sir Shadow's still playing. He used to put out a lot of videos. He was at every SKBC. Shadow's a great guy. He's an amazing knight. And my Grand Knight up the chain used him as an example to say, Shadow deserves to be a sword knight in every aspect.
Right.
He is amazing with the weapon combinations that he's gotten good with. He has proved himself to his peers. Shadow was never a warlord. Or at least at the time that this story was being told. He may have gotten it after that, but at the time that this story was being told, he wasn't a warlord. And Tarjay went on to explain the criteria of what makes a warlord after that. And I won't go into that for this story, but there was a distinction for him. And he had grown up in a culture where there was a distinction. And I think that was the correct way to go about it. I think that if we had that kind of distinction for all of the other belts, that we would be in a better place. Mm-hmm. And it ties into something that Clover's been saying here. It ties into something we've heard Lexi say before. Masterhood is, in its own right, something to be proud of, to be damn proud that you were able to get.
Yeah.
And we don't make it something to be damn proud of because you're not a knight yet.
Yeah, it's the last stop before the belt, and so nobody really.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
exactly. Yeah. It's just seen as 11. That's what it's seen as.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it was able to stand on its own merit, if it was able to be its own thing and say, and someone could stand up and say, I'm a master fucking dragon. I'm a master garber.
Yeah.
Not just because I got my 10th, but because I'm recognized in my kingdom as being one of the few, one of the greats out there. I think that there is quite a bit of value that could be added to that. And award standardization went in the opposite direction. And you started having these situations where, anyone that got their 10th sword, or their 10th warrior after that, this is not a PC term, but it's the term that people use, right? Is you were called a wartard. So you weren't a warlord anymore because you did not get your 21 wins in a row in a tournament situation, stuff like that. And then because the award shifted away from that, you can't even do that. The majority of the kingdoms now, because of the way that we count rounds or tournaments or something like that, you don't even have 21 opportunities anymore because
I fucking hate
the 3 fights that you do is counted as one now instead of... But, I grew up where all 3 of those fights, if you won... You did 3.
Yeah.
And for the third, if I won the first 2 and Clover and I were fighting, then you did the polite thing. You would say, may I fight a third?
Yeah.
And Clover had the opportunity to decline if he wanted to. And if he declined, it wasn't on me. My streak wasn't broken. But if I said no to the third, that broke my streak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
In that same instance, this was the only kingdom, and Neverwinter does it too, but this was the first kingdom I ever seen a tournament where wounds carried in an Iron Man.
We had to talk about that. This was one of the, so you grew up outside of Kingdom, outside of Neverwinter, outside of Winter's Edge. For us, when we went somewhere else and we were like, this kingdom doesn't do this, that they give all of the wounds back. This is Candyland. We thought it was insane. And I was a grown ass man 2 years away from getting my crown belt before I realized we were the baddies.
Yeah.
Every other kingdom was standing there in a group going, no, man, you're wrong. And it's no, we've got the right over here. I've got my Superman cape billowing out.
Yeah, now we just call it a Warlord sports style tournament and we give the damn wounds back because, come on, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it was insane.
Oh, man. Do we want to talk about some besides awards and belts and stuff?
Well, so I was setting up a segue, and then we all got on the soapbox, and it became a stage. But I did that.
So
I did
put your helmets on and pads. We'll tour around DC on our Segway.
No, so I'd set up this. Okay, I'm just going to tell you what the Segway was. It's ruined at this point, but it was going to be amazing.
I really want to hear it. Yeah, Clover and I are really curious. Go ahead.
So I set up this whole thing about warlords, and we talked about Warlord versus Sword Knight. And I was going to be like, so speaking of warlords, Sir Warlord Ryujin, tell us about your knight. So, with that
was really good. Clover, let's.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you can cut me out, completely edit everything I had to say out. So golf clap. We'll golf clap that one.
You guys joke. This new recorder we have has an applause button, and I have never used it in a podcast before. Is now the time?
It is.
Now's the time.
That one was a good one. Yeah.
It's the time.
Thank you.
Best Segway award goes to me.
It sounded like rain.
I swear to God. Tell us about your knight, Clover, please, God.
Okay, cool. So, Sir Warlord Ryujin, he's a unique character. I owe a lot of the way that I think about Antgard to him. He helped.
So he's who we have to blame.
Yeah, I was going to go.
Right. Yeah. Well, he helped me cut through a lot of the full crap because, in that same reason, there's a lot of why I look at awards, I guess, toxically. Because, I was new to the game, and I was definitely one of those guys, stuck in bronze, to use my earlier example.
Right.
And was looking at everything but me. But he saw some potential in me, and at the time, he only had a sword belt. And I was decent stick, as it goes.
Right.
So he picked me up. He pretty much picked me up straight to Squire. Well, no, I'm a liar. He picked me up at Man-at-Arms. And the way that his belt line works is in order to be a Squire, he only has so many Squire slots. And in order to be a Squire...
We all fight for them.
Pretty much. It's exactly it. You have to go out to each of the Squires' park and beat them in a best of 10 with their preferred weapon set.
It's a,
Oh, okay.
it's a
So-
Hunger Games kind of situation, huh?
It very much is, and if you do successfully beat each one of the squires in their preferred weapon set, then the one that you won the highest percentage by picks up a Man-at-Arms belt. And
Oh, no.
What's the movie where he has to go beat up all the old boyfriends?
yeah,
Scott
yeah,
Pilgrim,
Scott Pilgrim.
versus Universe, yeah.
yeah.
Clover's in a Scott
think
Pilgrim black belt behind us.
Well, I think he threw that out the window a while ago, especially with me moving way out of Kingdom. It's next to it. At first I was like, oh, I'm real comfortable out here in Florida. Ain't nobody ever gonna come.
Yeah, take the belt and run.
Yep, that's the end of them squires. That and my preferred weapon set was double daggers. So
It's just a fist fight. It's just a fist
pretty
fight.
much.
Yeah.
Pretty
You have to
much.
fight Clover
Well, and
using
so
his preferred
the thing
weapons.
is-
Punch.
Well, and the thing about it too is, I think Ryujin would have been down for that. He's very much a rough and tumble individual.
Sure.
And like I said, out in GP, there's a lot more, I guess, aggression and quick closing and stuff like that. And to be honest, so I believe he picked up his crown belt. And once he did that, he had to talk with me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I'm going to move you to Squire under my crown belt because they pick up on, they actually care where you're under." And he's like, "Here's the real talk." He's like, "You've been at the time. He's like, you've been you've had a fourth warrior for, I think at the time it was like 4 years at that point."
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're out of Kingdom," and he's like, "And your game creation and your leadership stuff is, that's the Squire belt you need." And I agree with him. And it's funny because I took forever to pick up a Man-at-Arms belt, and I was fortunate enough to find Samix, and gave him my Man-at-Arms belt. And I'm telling you, I had Samix as my Man-at-Arms for I think a year, maybe a little over.
Right.
When I sent the message to Ryujin, and I was like, "Look, man, Samix is damn near my peer. Like, he doesn't need to be wearing a Man-at-Arms belt." And I got my knight to come down here, I think, last fall? No, it was during the summer. What was summer? I got him to come down to our kingdom. He met us at Roaring Plains. We went to a day event at Roaring Plains.
Okay.
And he gave Samix his Squire belt. And that was a pretty good
That's
day. I
really
enjoyed
cool.
that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to see my knight. We sparred for a bit. He got taken off guard when I showed him some of my winter edge tricks that I've learned around here.
You throw sand in his eyes,
Oh, dang right.
or sorry,
so he's
snow, I guess.
he's gotten more into SCA, and part of the talk too is I love him. Ryujin is a great guy, but the real talk of it is he's in GP, and he's pretty much told me, "Hey, man, I'm proud of you to be my Squire and all that stuff, but I can't really be there for you the way I want to be." And he's like, "You can wear the red belt, and I'd be honored if you did, but you're kind of on your own."
That's a good approach, though. I mean, he told you straight up.
Yeah, I also assumed that he was in SCA when you said Warlord. It's where all warlords go to die.
Right? It's the Florida of warlords.
Yeah.
I'm a warlord. I crave violence and pain.
Man, so I'm gonna tell you, it was so different too. Because I used to train with him every day, and I want to say my stick level has stagnated compared to the way that it was growing when I would train with him daily.
Right.
And just the way that he fights and the way that GP fights is kind of very different from Winter's Edge. One of my biggest skills that I learned from him was just the real close, like hammer and anvil style blocking.
Yeah.
And my inside defense, I like to appreciate I think my inside defense is really good, but out here there's just a lot more really weird, like I call them floppy shots, where it's just like somebody's doing some sort of squid arm at you, and you can get the inside block, but the truth of the matter is, even if you get it, it looks really suspect.
Yeah.
So you just accept that if it looked close enough, you should probably just take it.
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in an environment where if someone gets as close as you just now described to play the game that you learned to play, I have fucked up.
Yeah.
Not in some small way, but in some great way. I have fucked up.
Well, it's
Well,
I
so-
think this is an age thing. So I used to exclusively throw wrap shots.
Yeah.
And at a certain point your wrist says, "No, thank you. We're not doing that anymore." And your elbow to some degree. So like I mostly throw flats now and I just try to block more and like predict more. So I feel like that also is whatever the mean age of your kingdom is, like that's probably going to be related.
Right, that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why it led to double daggers, because like under his tutelage, I learned to do what I call just churning dirt, which is, it's like the old football drills where your job is just to get up and give that dude a smooch as quick as you can. Like,
I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just absolutely hate the way you worded it.
Yeah, it's we actually used to do dagger drill style stuff where it was like you only had one sword and a dagger to practice your blocking or something, or really it puts more focus on your footwork, which is I think Gillen could give a master class in just complaints that he has on people's footwork and things like that. But it's what wins or loses in tournaments. Absolutely. Anybody listen to this, work on your footwork, you'll win more tournaments, period.
Yeah. Well, Clover, we've
one of the
put
things
in.
oh man, I still had a whole other.
Oh well, I mean,
Sorry.
what do you got for us? What do you got? And we'll
Well,
see.
I've
We've put in
got-
about 2 hours so far.
I mean, I can go till y'all tell me I'm done.
It is almost midnight here, so not. I
All
don't want to
right.
tell you you're done, but I am almost done.
All right. Well, one of the things I did want to talk about, if it's all right with you, is
Sure.
battle games. I like to get out and talk to people about that.
Yeah, man, that's your whole
because-
thing. Go for it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to lead off with like absolutely 100% love battle games. Like the thing that I get out of Amp-Guard, and like earlier you talking about selling it. For
Right.
me particularly, the thing that keeps me coming back, the crack that is Amp-Guard, is being able to like build these games, and it's why the magic is so important and stuff too. That extra level is, man, at the end of a battle game, when I can look out over a field and see the players and see that they had a good time, it does something. It like releases all the dopamine in the back of my skull, and oh man, it's the greatest thing in the world. And the thing is, I want to get a call out there if I can to anybody that's willing to listen. Build them. It's like Field of Dream style. Like build your battle games, and the players will play them. Because I've been going around the kingdom. I've been talking to people about battle games, and like they always, everybody I've talked to has like an idea, right? They have an idea of, man, I was thinking about this battle game, right? And I'll provide my my view on it. Hey, maybe you should try this or try that. But the big thing that I think everybody needs to do is run it, dude. Just run the game. Like, even if it's terrible, you're going to learn something. And I have yet to see a game that can't get play tested into being right, into being a great game.
Yeah, totally.
And so I kind of want to get a call out there to people to like, that is what our game is. Like 75% of our rule book is dedicated to that thing. And gosh, I just want to see them. I want to see dungeons. I want to see. I worry that like people that we have that are doing battle games. When I say, hey, Kingdom battle games, the people that always come up to mind, they go, oh, well, that's Clover, that's Bash. Sometimes I hear that's Teflon, not very often, but sometimes.
Teflon loves making wacky props. That can definitely be Teflon.
Yeah.
But like, I want to hear more names, man. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for the opportunity to run for champion and all that stuff, and I absolutely enjoy doing it. But I don't want to be alone up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely understand that.
The more, and honestly, the more people that you can backboard off of, the better it is. And I mean, one of the stories that I talked about when I first got here was how much fun I had at my first event here, which was the second CC, and that was Cade. You know what I mean? Well, it wasn't just Cade, but a lot of it was Cade. And I know he's been super busy, doing his stuff in the kitchen, and he actually did kitchen for our Titanomachy, which is great. But I would like to see him out there doing more BGs. And I'm actually collaborating with him on some stuff coming up here soon. I don't know how much of that I can talk about.
Ooh, that's a good spoiler.
Secrets.
Right? But yeah, I want to see more people getting in there, and I'll also put the call out there, like if you are hesitant for anything about a game that you've made, man, again, this is the thing that I enjoy. Freaking send me it. I will give you my feedback. I will help you in any shape, form, or fashion that I can, because man, that's what I just like doing it. What else is there? That's all I have on the battle game stuff.
No, I like that, and I think that's a good call to action. Better so than many of the things that we've seen. I mean, you're right. 70% of our rule book is dedicated to battle games, so I like that. I like the drive for it. I think that's as good a place as any to wrap it up. Normally, we would ask you.
I didn't do my stories. I didn't get my recommendations.
We will do a part 2. We would do recommendations. We actually have about 5 people on the docket currently that we are trying to find time for. So we will come back to you privately for the recommendations. I do want to have Samix on at some point. I don't know if that was going to be one of them. But normally we would ask you to name your episode, but I don't think I have a choice. We have to call this one the Soapbox.
No, just name it. Call it just Soapboxes.
Just Soapboxes. Yes. Okay.
Soapboxes, just soapboxes.
Soapboxes, just Soapboxes.
Soapboxes, just Soapboxes.
All right. Let me put that in my notes real quick.
Dude, I feel like I didn't get to talk about half of the things that I had on my little notepad.
Listen,
we got into awards, and that was the end of it.
Well, yeah, that was a solid 45 minutes or so. Well, look, man, there's always we can always do a part 2. It's just getting late here.
Great. I understand.
Me and Flo both work at the same place, and we got to be at work at 7 a.m. So that's sort of our stopping point. But we can always do a part 2. This was a lot of fun, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no doubt. Appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. So thanks everyone for listening. Stick around. We will do a part 2 with Clover at some point in the future, probably sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. And stick around on our social media to see who our next guest is going to be. Give this video a like on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. And subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, Pocket Casts, wherever you happen to pick these up. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Have a good night.